overworked, stressed, and burned out. That's how 52% of workers responded to a recent survey conducted to evaluate the quality of worker welfare. This is where Joychiever comes in. Founded by the brilliant Tracy Lalonde, a formerly burned out overachiever herself, Tracy is an author and a professional speaker with over 28 years in training and development. Tracy created Joychiever as a service and resource to help businesses and individuals find an enjoyable, sustainable work-life blend. With Joychiever, even the busiest of individuals can make daily intentional choices for joy. We've all been there, uncertain about our choices and worried that the professional path we're on is not allowing us to live as intently and as passionately as we would like. So visit joychiever.com and take their customized Roadmap for Joy survey. It's a great place to start your own personal joy journey. That's joychiever.com, JOYCHIEVER.com.
Thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is a guy who is always happy whether Puxatawney Phil sees a shadow or not, Mike Vandebogart.
Thanks, Joe, and thank you once again to all our loyal listeners for tuning in. It feels good to be back, Joe. We were off for kind of about a month.
Oh, why was that, Mike?
I had my first child, so...
Hey!
Yay!
All right. I don't have a clap ring. I could just have a...
laugh. So yeah, that was exciting. I'm always tired now, but we're getting back at it. So just a couple quick announcements here before we get going. First, I'd like to thank our new Patreon supporters. So we've got Kate Rossing, Gwendolyn Buchanan. This person didn't leave their name, so I'm just giving their username, GF301. Thank you, GF. Jesse Dudas, Ann Burke, Valerie Johnson, and Gavin Hardcastle, which is the coolest last name we've ever had.
Kevin Hardcastle?
Yeah. So, and we also have our first YouTube member. So
That's our first one.
Give a shout out to Deborah Wales, which I believe she's actually supported us on Patreon before too. So
awesome. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah, for that. And just a couple updates on some upcoming episodes. So we are in contact with several family members of Gwen Hasselquist, and we're going to be doing a follow-up episode probably in the March or April timeframe.
Yeah, we're working through schedules right now for scheduling the interviews and just talking to some of them because some of them want to remain anonymous.
Yep.
So we're treading very lightly to make sure we're protecting everyone's identities and doing everything as best we can.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. And we also have a pretty cool episode coming up that we're going to try and live stream. This gentleman went missing in the wilderness of Washington State and was missing for 9 days and survived on like a can of SpaghettiOs and river water. So he's going to come on the podcast with us and kind of go through his life story, you know, how this happened, how did he survive, you know, tips and advice for other people if they ever go missing. So kind of excited for that one.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
Yeah. So that's all I had.
All right, everybody, let's gear up and get down to explore Locations Unknown.
June 8th, 2021, a Jackson, Wyoming resident, bartender, and local snowboard instructor set out for a solo hike in Grand Teton National Park with limited gear on a moderate 8-mile trail. Witnesses reported seeing him around mid-afternoon. This is the last time he would be seen. Join us this week as we investigate the disappearance of Cian McLaughlin. Grand Teton National Park is one of my favorite parks, I think, in the national park system. Joe, I've hiked it before.
Yeah, I didn't do that one with you. I was pretty jealous.
Yeah, I did a really cool big loop through the park up over the Paintbrush Divide several years ago now, and it was a very enjoyable park. It was the one hike that I've come within probably 30 yards of a grizzly bear off the trail, which is terrifying when it actually happens to you. So it was really cool. Park is
we know for a fact there's grizzlies at that park.
We do. I've seen them. They exist there. So I'm going to go through a quick location profile of the park for the listeners who've never heard of Grand Teton or have been there. It's about 310,000 acres, which is about the size of the city limits of Phoenix, Arizona. So it's a pretty large park. In 2020, it had almost about 3.3 million visitors, which would make it the 5th most visited national park in the U.S. And anyone who's been there, pre-COVID will know that if you go in the summer, it's a very busy park. So one of my questions later on in this episode is, it would be hard to go missing in this park just by the sheer fact that there's so many people in it. But we can get into that a little bit later. It's located in the state of Wyoming. And I'm going to go through a couple fun facts with you, Joe, about Grand Teton. So the park was established in 1929 and then again in 1950. In 1929, President Calvin Coolidge went against enormous public opposition and approved the original 96,000-acre park, which encompassed the Teton Range and 6 glacial lakes. In 1943, Franklin D. Roosevelt established the 210,000-acre Jackson Hole National Monument to protect the remaining federal lands on the valley floor. The park's iconic feature, the 40-mile-long Teton Range, is one of the youngest ranges in the Rocky Mountains, and it's actually some of the youngest mountains in the world, so pretty cool there. A lot of people probably don't know this. Grand Teton is the only U.S. national park with a commercial airport, so you can actually commercially fly into Grand Teton National Park. The Jackson Hole Airport was built in the 1930s and became part of the Jackson Hole National Monument in 1943. And then it was absorbed into the national park when the monument was kind of absorbed. So pretty cool. Human history in the Grand Teton region dates back at least 11,000 years when the first nomadic hunter-gatherer Paleo-Indians began migrating into the region during warmer months pursuing food. So this one is kind of funny. So the Grand Teton National Park is named for Grand Teton, which is the tallest mountain in the Teton Range. The naming of the mountain is attributed to early 19th century French-speaking trappers who basically called it the Three Teats. So later on, it was shortened to the Tetons. So
it's actually not shortened.
Yeah,
it's longer. It's been made more politically correct.
Yeah, when I hiked there, I didn't know that was the original naming of the mountains, and a park ranger filled us in.
Yeah.
So
I bet he loves filling people in on that.
He's probably told that story a million times.
Yeah, at least. I mean, there's 3 million people there a year.
Yeah. I'm
actually, as you're talking, I'm streaming the images from when you were there. So some of these images you're seeing are from Mike's trip.
Cool. So just go into a little, I know some people that listen to the podcast absolutely hate when we give these location profiles, but for a lot of people listening, a lot
of people like it. So
yeah,
and we like it. So then we're overruling everyone else.
Yeah. So I'm going to go over some features of the park. So the climate in the Grand Teton region, referring to our old friends at the Köppen climate classification.
Is it Köppen or Köppen?
Köppen, probably.
It's Köppen. It's got the umlaut over it, so you got to go the O. Oh, Köppen.
Yeah. So it's a humid continental climate, which is typified by 4 distinct seasons and large seasonal temperature differences with warm to hot and often humid summers and cold, sometimes severely cold in the northern areas during the winters. And precipitation is pretty evenly distributed through the year. At the time of this disappearance, the average highs would be around 71. The average lows would be in the upper 30s. And there's typically, on average, no snow during June. So, and you'd get about 1.8 inches of rain. So chances are he had pretty good weather for his hike. And based on some of the information we'll share later, it turns out he did.
Yeah, we actually have images from the day of, not from him, but from other hikers.
Yeah. So as you can see, Joe...
I will say one thing.
Yes.
I'll create a Facebook picture group thing, photo album on Facebook that has all the images. So
yeah.
Mike's hike, the stuff from the show. I know I fell behind on Gwen. I actually put that one up too.
Yeah.
I should have put that in the beginning, but we'll have the Facebook picture page for this episode.
Excellent. So you can see from some of the pictures, if you're watching, that lower elevations, it's very forestry, if that's a term.
Yeah.
A lot of pine trees and thick vegetation. And as you get up past the tree line, there's absolutely no no vegetation. So there's really no shelter from the elements once you get above the tree line. And it's obviously very rocky. A lot of the hike at higher elevations, you're hiking on loose scree and that kind of rock. It's a very young mountain range, like we said. It formed between 6 and 9 million years ago. It runs roughly north to south and rises from the floor of Jackson Hole without any foothills along a 40-mile long by 7 to 9 mile wide fault block mountain front. So this has been, they've had earthquakes in this area in the past, but it's a pretty dormant seismic area now. So I think the largest earthquake this area's had is a 7.5 magnitude earthquake. But the only recent one in historical times has been a 5.0 magnitude in 1850. So, in addition to the 13,775 foot high peak of Grand Teton, there's 9 other peaks that are over 12,000 feet. So, it's a pretty cool mountain range. A lot of mountain climbers come to this area, so it's very popular because I'll get into it in a little bit, but a lot of the climbing routes are very accessible by car, so it makes it really easy to climb.
Yeah, it looks super jagged. It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I saw some of the pictures even outside yours of like areas where people go climbing. It looks awesome.
Yeah, I would definitely go back there and do another trip in the future. So animals in the park, you've got moose are very abundant. You've got elk, white-tailed deer, mule deer. You've got cougars and bobcats. Both are very rare in the park. You've got bison, which are very common, mountain goats, bighorn sheep. You've got gray wolves, coyotes, red foxes, and there's, like we said, there are lots of bears. Black bears are very common, but you also have brown bears and grizzlies, and I can 100% vouch that there are grizzlies there because we ran into one. So they exist.
We won't get in trouble this time.
So you just got to follow, if you're backcountry hiking in a place like this, you got to follow all the rules around, storing your food in bear country, hanging your food at camp. You never want to cook in your camp. You always want to cook, I believe, downwind from where you're sleeping. You don't want to be cooking and then have that smell blowing through all of your gear.
Yeah.
So you always want to
all over you.
You always want to be downwind from wherever you're sleeping. So just, do those common precautions and you won't have any bear problems. Elevation is one of the major risks hiking in this park. Obviously, you have increased chance of dehydration, severe sunburn, altitude sickness, and these are all aggravated if you have pre-existing conditions. Like we said, the Grand Teton's almost 14,000 feet, and there's no shelter at the top, so you got to be careful. Lightning is a major issue in the summer. They do have storms in the summer months in Grand Teton, and you just got to be mindful of the weather forecast the day you're going hiking, because once you get above the tree line, you're going to have nowhere to hide. So
yeah.
A lot of times during the year, you're going to have to cross snowfields while you're hiking. I had to cross several to get up to the Paintbrush Divide.
Were you concerned about any crevasse or anything like that?
I wasn't concerned about that, but I didn't have...
Were you not concerned because you didn't know about them yet? Or
yeah, so I was not thinking crevasses when I was crossing the snowfields. What I was worried about was I didn't have proper boots to hike in a snowy environment.
Oh.
So I was worried about slipping and like rolling down the mountain. So I actually had a video up on our YouTube channel, I believe, of me crossing it. And I pretty much kind of leaned towards the mountain and like inched across because it was a pretty steep grade and I didn't want to slip and, tumble down the mountain you go. So, if you're hiking in the winter months or early spring or, very late fall, you may want to bring some, something that will help you cross those snowfields better than just your regular hiking boots.
Did you have like an ice axe or anything?
I had a hiking pole.
Oh,
that's all.
That won't hold. We were helping stabilize, but it's not going to save.
We were hiking in August, so there wasn't that many areas where that had snow, but there were still several that were kind of hairy to cross.
Okay.
The other ones you're going to have hypothermia in the winter and heat exhaustion in the summer, and ticks at the lower elevations. You got to be careful about that. They carry some pretty nasty diseases. Rocky Mountain spotted fever is one of them. And I remember picking a few ticks off of my pants. So you just gotta be careful.
Yeah, it's not good.
Difficulty in general, Grand Teton National Park, like I said, is a popular destination for mountain and rock climbers, because of, the climbs are very accessible by road. Trails are well marked and routes to the summits of most peaks are long established. And for the experienced and fit, most peaks can be climbed in one day. So, that's why people really like it. Climbers don't need a permit either, but are encouraged to register their climbing plans. And we've always encouraged you to tell people of any hiking plan and check in with the ranger station. If you do an overnight stay in the backcountry there, you do need a permit. On average, about 4,000 climbers per year attempt the summit of Grand Teton. And the park does have about 200 miles of hiking trails, and they do range from very easy to extremely strenuous. So great park. I think it has something for everyone. If you're not too adventurous when you go hiking, there's plenty of trails that you could do that are well marked, groomed, and you can enjoy the park like I did. So I think Joe is going to
I'm gonna get on the profile soon, but my computer froze.
Uh-oh.
So,
well, I'll keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking about it. And then I'll get back on here.
Interesting story. You
probably lost my video of the stream.
Yeah.
Does it still say it's recording though?
Yes, it's recording just you.
Yep.
Okay. So an interesting story. Sorry about that. We were having a little bit of a technical difficulty here with
and
Joe's
a speaking
computer.
difficulty.
And a speaking difficulty. Interesting story. When we were hiking Grand Teton, we got up early one morning, put our camp together, and we started hiking down the trail, and all of a sudden these rangers started sprinting, like right
past you, or
right up behind us, and then blew past us. And
were they following you, or you didn't even see them and they came out of nowhere?
No, they were hunting down these two guys that were starting fires in the park.
Oh.
And they had like shovels in their hands, and they were like running to go get them. And we were like making the joke, like, are you just going to like arrest them, or like,
yeah, like, what do you do?
What are you going to do? Like, so we never actually caught up to them, or, who they caught, but there were a couple guys that were starting fires in the park, and at the time it was very dry, so they had a no fire policy, and so that was just an interesting experience. Just quickly, are we still recording on there?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have all of it. It's fine. So
what froze?
Like the whole computer.
Oh really?
Yeah. I was trying to share pictures, I think, so I'm not going to do that way ever again. Okay. But that's fine. You want to just do character profile, and this thing's booting back up, and I'll come right back online?
Yeah. So, okay. Like we said, the guy's name is Cian McLaughlin. He was 27. He was a dual Irish-U.S. citizen, and he'd been living in Jackson, Wyoming where he worked as a bartender and a snowboard instructor. And when I was doing research for this case, I was getting really confused because I kept reading about Jackson Hole. And Jackson Hole is the valley, and Jackson, Wyoming is the town in the valley. So I was getting that kind of mixed up.
Yeah,
so,
I was like, he's from Jackson, Wyoming. You're like, are you sure? Because there's a Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And then I didn't know either. So I was like, I got confused also. And I was like, it says, so I searched Jackson, Wyoming. Then it says Jackson Hole some places, not Jackson Hole in others. And then we realized it was the Jackson Hole Valley.
Yes. So he was 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. He had brown hair, brown eyes. Clothing he was last seen in were...
I'm coming back on, so you can just keep going.
So clothing he was last seen in were shorts, white t-shirt, bucket hat, hiking boots, wire-rimmed sunglasses, a unique silver necklace, a red Apple Watch, a red iPhone 12 mini, and he was carrying a water bottle. He also had a noticeable forearm tattoo on his left arm. So personality, his uncle said, he was very sociable and chatty. He would definitely have talked to anyone that he saw on the trail. And obviously being a bartender and an instructor.
Yeah, you're going to know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
And generally be interested in interacting with people in that matter too.
And I couldn't get any information on his experience in this location, but the fact that he lived in Jackson, Wyoming, and he was a snowboard instructor, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's probably experienced hiking and climbing in this location.
Yeah, that is kind of the same general concept that I got to, just reading about him. It seemed like he knew at least the area. It's like you live there, he's going to know the weather patterns and things like that. It's not like he's an out-of-towner that doesn't know what to be doing. So my assumption was he kind of gets it.
Yeah. So Joe looks like
I'm back.
He's back. Sorry for the technical difficulty there.
Yes. Okay.
So Joe's going to jump into the timeline.
Yes. So it is July 8th. Yes, that's what it is. July 8th, 2:15. That's a Tuesday. So Cian set out on a solo hike through Grand Teton. Security cameras show that he entered the park via the Moose entrance station on Tuesday at 2:15. McLaughlin's route was unknown. He could have been hiking the Garnet Canyon, Surprise Amphitheater, Delta, or Taggart Lake areas.
So this is, anyone who's listened for a long time, this is a big no-no for us.
Yep.
Always fill somebody in on your route, or at a minimum, leave a note or something.
Yeah, just even like I'm going to come in this area. Even if you're not sure, I'm going to be in this general area. These are the trails I was thinking about. So just what's your thought process? Where do you think you could go?
Yeah.
Even if you say, I'm taking this trail, but I'm doing photography, so I might wander a little bit to get pictures or things like that. So then even then a rescuer could go, okay, here's the trail. What are some areas on this trail that I might go take pictures of? Things like that. So you give people an idea of where you are in case something happens. So as Mike said, we went over this profile. This park's super popular. These trails that he's going on, they're not, they're remote, but they are traveled.
Yeah.
So he's in an area with lots of people. He's experienced, he knows the area, and he went missing. So so that's just kind of reiterating how important it is, even if you're just going to go for a day hike, make sure somebody knows.
Yeah. And honestly, this would help the search and rescue team narrow in. So like the first 24 to 48 hours of a search and rescue are the most vital, even in summer months. Especially if you're injured. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they just know he was hiking in Grand Teton, a park that's 310,000 acres.
Yeah.
That's a huge area to search. And if they know what trail you're on, they can direct all that manpower to that area instead of
just get that focus and have a way better shot at outcome.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until the 10th, Thursday, McLaughlin failed to show up for work at his place of employment. So that's when someone knew something was wrong. Probably thought he was ghosting his shift or whatever.
Yeah.
On the 12th, which is a Saturday, late in the evening, McLaughlin was officially reported missing to the Teton County Sheriff's Office.
So that's a pretty big delay in, I think it's safe to assume that
4 days.
Yeah, he went missing sometime on the 8th. And, he wasn't reported missing to the authorities until late on the 12th.
Yeah.
We're already starting off behind the 8 ball on this one.
Absolutely.
So
then the next day on the Sunday at 7 a.m., the Teton Interagency Dispatch Center was notified of McLaughlin's disappearance by the Teton County Sheriff's Office. McLaughlin's vehicle was located at the Lupine Meadows Trailhead in Grand Teton National Park on Sunday morning, June 13th. So midday on that Sunday, a massive search kicks off looking for Cian. Aerial reconnaissance and ground search operations were conducted in the high probability areas of the park on June 13th. And basically no evidence or leads turned up about his whereabouts.
Yeah, and I mean, it's unfortunate that they didn't have a specific location that they were, trying to, search. So this...
Well, and it's worth noting, because even if his car's at a trailhead, we've been to many parks, you park where you can and either hitch a ride with somebody or take like the bus or there's other transportation. So parking your car somewhere in a national park also doesn't necessarily mean you're there. I mean, odds are he was in that area. Yeah. But I mean, there's times we've gone to national parks, parked in one place and went to the other end of the park, then started hiking. We did that in Glacier. Yep. We had to take the bus like 4 stops to get to our start from where our car was.
Yeah. So... that's, another interesting aspect of it they have surveillance of him entering the park. His car is still there. So I think it's safe to assume he's in the park.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go on now.
So on the 17th, now this is a few days later, Rangers received a report of a June 8th sighting of a man that fit McLaughlin's description by a local climbing guide. The guide reported seeing the man hiking up Garnett Canyon Trail above the Garnett Canyon Surprise Lake Junction around 3:45 p.m. And this is on the 8th. The trail is an 8.2-mile round trip and has a peak elevation of 9,280 feet. It is ranked as a moderate strenuous on the official Grand Teton National Park website. He described him as a solo hiker who had shoulder-length hair and was wearing round glasses, a white shirt, shorts, and a hat. The guide also reported the man as having tattoos on his arm and carrying a water bottle. So that's pretty
good description.
Pretty good description. It sounds like that was definitely him.
Yep.
Based on this new information, the search operations have been adjusted today to focus more on the Garnett Canyon. So this is exactly what Mike was saying. They were looking in popular places everywhere. Yeah. And now it's like 8-9 days later? Yeah. 7 days later, whatever. And they are just now focusing on the area that he was seen in.
Yeah. So it's, your chances of, successfully finding someone still alive at this point have gone down tremendously. Though it's not unheard of. I mean, like we mentioned in the beginning of the episode, we are going to be interviewing a guy who survived for 9 days in Washington State's wilderness. Yep. So it can happen, but your odds of survival go down so much. But the strange part about this is how popular and busy this park is. Yeah. Towards the end, when we get to theories, I'm going to read a statement from another person who hiked this park and kind of their theory of, how weird it would be to go missing at this time of year in this park. So, yeah.
So at the point that they adjusted their search, it included like 50 park staff conducting ground search in the high probability areas, 6 search and rescue dog teams, members of the Teton County Sheriff Search and Rescue, and the Teton Interagency helicopter was involved in the search. So they had a lot of people out there looking for him. Yep. Over the next few days, after the extensive ground and aerial efforts, the search for McLaughlin shifted tactics to a continuous but limited mode. So this is where they start saying, based on what he was seen having, what he expected, we're past the point of, this is, we got to scale it down a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, from what everything we read, he wasn't really prepared gear wise to spend multiple days out in the backcountry. Like it seems like he was just going for a day hike or a day climb and then was coming back. He didn't have, from what I can tell, he didn't have a backpack. Yeah. He didn't have any kind of cold weather gear. He didn't have any kind of, illumination like headlamp or anything. He didn't have a tent, a backpack, or a sleeping bag. Yeah. So he was not prepared to spend any kind of extended time out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Which works against him.
And they had these teams. I mean, this says they had them navigating super steep areas, technical terrain, and hazardous areas, many requiring ropes, ice axes, crampons, like the whole deal just to get into. And there were over 45 helicopter search missions that were conducted.
Yeah.
What was cool, and you found this, Mike, that they used this new technology called RECCO, Rescue Technology.
Yeah.
You want to give everyone a little idea of what that is? I looked it up a little bit. It looks really sweet.
Yeah. So it basically it assists in search and rescue incidents by sending a signal, so the helicopter will send a signal, then that reflects off these, we'll call them Reco chips or clothing, and sometimes even cell phones. And it's basically, if you go to their website, we'll post a link because I find it really cool. And I think if more people wore stuff like this, less people would go missing. But they have we're not sponsored by them. So
yeah, or maybe soon we will be. But
maybe.
As of this moment, we're not.
We don't typically really highlight, products.
Well, I didn't look at it as like a thing that like you can purchase it, but I looked at it more like their company appealing to outdoors companies to say integrate our thing in your clothes, and then you can use it as a marketing thing, but also will help people. Yeah, there are shirts and sweatshirts and coats and backpacks that you can buy with this technology integrated into it, or you can just buy these little. They look like little Velcro straps that you can strap to like a climbing helmet or your backpack or a shirt. So really cool technology. It'll be interesting to see where this goes if it becomes like common. Yeah, basically it looked like they it's a radar and the helicopters send a signal down. If you have this thing in your clothes or on the thing, it like reflects it back and says, "Oh, somebody's here." That's not natural. Yeah, it doesn't give like a precise location, but it will give a ping to a general area. Like, okay, we've got a ping in this area. Let's focus our efforts. And like I was saying, it'll be interesting to see if this kind of technology becomes more common going forward in gear that backcountry hikers use. I really hope so. And it'd be cool if they sold these little things right in like the gift shop of the national parks even. Yeah. So yeah, cool technology. I've never heard of this used before. Mm-hmm. This is the first time I've heard of it. So pretty cool. So in addition to that, which I agree, it looked really awesome. I hope something good happens with it. The Civil Air Patrol conducted aerial operations using forward-looking infrared technology. So that's the FLIR we were talking about. Yep. Thermal imaging cameras to detect heat sources. And then they spoke with over 140 people with tips and information about Cian. Yeah, so unfortunately, the family and friends have still kept up the search. And park rangers, while doing a very limited search, they continue when they're hiking out in the wilderness. They keep an eye out for these people that have gone missing, but nothing was ever found. None of his gear was found that he had with him. None of his clothing, the watch, the phone. That always gets me. I know. I mean, it's great that he had his phone with him. I always say, bring your phone with. When I was hiking in the Tetons, there's no cell reception. So, I mean, unfortunately, you're probably not even going to get a single bar, but always have it with you just in case. I mean, it could be life or death if you just happen to get a slight signal for a minute. So, before we get into theories, I do have. Joe's got some audio here for us. Yeah, it'll be video too, so I'm just going to minimize that and make sure I switch on the stream. While he's doing that, here we go. It's what this is. It's an interview with the park ranger that was involved in the search. Let me get some volume up on here.
The search for Cian won't end from our perspective until we find him. So tactics shift over time. And we're coming on towards winter. We expect that snow will fall on the ground, which will make some of the clues we're looking for a little more difficult to find. There are items that we believe that he had with him, and those are things that we might see out in the landscape. We continue to really work with the public, soliciting for information. We have missing person flyers throughout the park, at entrance stations, at trailheads, and our staff is always patrolling in the field, both in the summer and the winter. And so the tactics they use, again, may shift a little bit, but we'll have ski patrollers out and whatnot. And everyone who goes out into the area we believe that Cian was last known to be will be looking for him and looking for clues.
So that was a park ranger basically describing to the press that they're going to be scaling back the search for Cian because it's all that time has passed and they have an understanding of what they look for. So what she explained is what we've talked about in several episodes on like it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult topic to broach because you have somebody out missing and you're basically giving the sign that we're giving up.
Yep. And
they never really do, but it's kind of a more PC way of saying that we're past this time where we'd expect him to be alive.
Yeah, and even the family goes into saying that it turned into a recovery at a certain point. They would like to find his remains to have closure at this point. Mm-hmm. So it's it's a sad situation. Before we go into theories and everything, there was just a statement by Grand Teton National Park Ranger that and law enforcement that said they didn't suspect that he suffered from any type of mental health issue. So. I think we're not in the theories just yet, but I don't think mental health was an issue. But here are some of the issues I have with the facts of this case. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean issues in the sense that they're not real or anything, but just things that don't make sense to me. So for an experienced, hiker, climber, instructor, he was not dressed appropriately for hiking in the backcountry, and he didn't have the proper gear. I could probably chalk that up to people when they get to a certain level of, experience hiking and climbing, probably get a little, arrogant about how good they are out in the wilderness.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say even arrogance, more like it becomes more routine or casual.
Yeah, I guess that's the term. Yeah, not arrogant.
Yeah, but no, it kind of means the same thing. Kind of like, this is just like I've been to this mountain.
Doing a day hike.
Yeah, I'm doing a day hike. I've been to this mountain 50 times. Yeah. Like it becomes like kind of walking out your door.
Yep.
We're gonna do it more absent-minded because you're not intentionally doing it.
So that's an issue for me. He started hiking late afternoon. I know he lived there, so he may have just intended to hike up the trail for 4 hours and then turn around. But whenever I'm hiking, in a national park, we always try to get up at sunrise or even before because you want to beat the crowds, you want to beat the heat. And a lot of times if you can get going early in the morning, you don't have to kill yourself as much, pushing to get to the top if you start earlier, because sometimes if you're not making good time and you still want to try and summit, you got to really start hoofing it.
Yeah, and all the bad weather comes typically in the afternoon in the mountains.
Yeah, so
like if you're going to have storms, it's going to be at noon and 1 and 2.
Yeah, so that's an issue for me. Some people online who have hiked this area a lot, and I can kind of vouch for the trail I was on, at least in Grand Teton. It would be really tough to get lost on a lot of these trails because they're so popular. Interesting. The trailhead that he started on was only a 35-minute drive from Jackson. So I think we can assume he's hiked this before. And a lot of people online said the area he was hiking is a generally easier area to hike. So it doesn't make sense that an experienced hiker, climber could have gone missing in this area of the park. So just an interesting, issues I had with what happened here. So I think Joe actually has he's got some All Trails comments from this area right around when this guy went missing.
Yeah, so we what I started doing is on All Trails, what's really cool about this app is not only do people share pictures of the trails that a lot of times we're talking about, but it gives us like how long it took them to hike it. They put in comments about how difficult it was. They'll take pictures and they'll show where those pictures were along the trail. What's really cool too is you kind of get a good running visual representation of the current status of that trail. Lucky for us, there are literally images from the day he went missing from other people who did this trail. So we'll be posting those on the internet. You want to share my screen? Can you do it from yours?
Oh, yeah.
So here are the results we got from just a couple of random grabs from right around that time. So I have this one from June 7th, so the day before he went missing. Carlos and Paula say this was by far my favorite hike of the Grand Tetons. The other reviews were from a couple of weeks ago, so the snow was a lot worse. When we went, the snow was only on the trail at the very end. We had poles and micro spikes and made the snowy parts past the end of the hike very easy. 10 of 10, please do this hike. It's awesome. So what's cool is this is the day before he was there. He said there was a ton of snow, but at this point, it was pretty much gone, so it made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
This is a review from June 11th. Beautiful hike, amazing views. Trail was clearly marked, saw an elk and a bear. Very challenging, but took our time. Leave early to avoid crowds. So that comment tells me there's a lot of people on this trail.
Yep.
If he's making suggestions like, because you and I feel the same, we do not like being around tons of people. So we go at certain times where we think no one else will be there. So that's enough that he's commenting on it. Now here, and again, these will be on Facebook for the audio listeners only. Here are some photos taken by the All Trail users on the day Cian went missing. This is Garnet Canyon to the Lower Saddle Trail.
Oop, I think you got to scroll down. There you go.
Yeah, I was just reading it. So as you can see, like there's some trees, there's definitely some exposure, but it's pretty open.
Yeah.
So again, when I look at this, is if you go missing in this area, you're not necessarily going to be like under a ton of brush.
Yeah.
Like where it would be hard for people to find you, especially if you have colored clothing.
If you unfortunately fell, one of the comments I'll read in a few minutes is other people would see you. Either fall or they would see your body, not to get Grizzly or anything, down at the bottom of the canyon.
Exactly.
So it's wide open in a lot of these spots.
Yeah, it's exposed. And so here's another picture from that day. So very clear.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it's stormy, no snow. So like very good conditions for hiking.
Yeah.
All right, you can pull the screen. There you go.
Yeah. So, where he was hiking reminds me a lot of, the trail we did. It looks very similar, and it's puzzling that he could have gone missing. So, this is a statement, before we get into what we think happened, this is a statement from a person on my favorite platform that I always say I don't like to quote, but I do, Reddit. So take it with a grain of salt. They could have totally made all this up, but it sounds similar to what I experienced hiking there. So this person wrote, completed the Garnet Canyon Trail today. The trail was packed Saturday in July, so not surprised. I find it very strange that he went missing without a clue. Granted, he had nothing with him. I watched multiple people running down my trail, which was steep and tons of loose rocks and tree roots. They had nothing but a water bottle. I had views of Taggart Lake, majority of the hike. I don't believe he went missing from that trail. It seemed like a heavily trafficked trail. Not to mention, at least from my perspective, it didn't seem all that high or tough. Trail max elevation gain is 1,600 feet, which is the same trail start I did up until the point you either continue higher or you turn towards the lakes and descend. The trail I completed didn't get sketchy till the top, where we were about 2,600 feet in elevation gain. It's loose, small rocks, and then you hit an end, which is huge boulders clogging the valley, which has a glacier melt running through parts. Plenty of overnight hikers climbing and over and through the giant rocks. I felt confident if something were to happen to me and I was conscious or at least unconscious within 10 or 20 feet of the trail, I would be found just by the pure volume of people going up and down. If I were to have fallen, there weren't many sharp cliffs, more of very steep declines. Most were like 60 or 80 degrees. So even if I fell, it would be easy to spot. Something about this just doesn't pass the smell test. That is kind of the impression I got when I read this case after hiking the Tetons.
Yeah. And I didn't go there. So, because like you immediately were kind of weirded out by this case. Like, and I, to be honest, I didn't even put my finger on it. I didn't mention it because I wanted it to come out on the actual show, but I didn't think about it. Like after you've been there, kind of around the same weathery time period, and given the images of what we saw, what actual conditions were, I can kind of see how it's like this is a hard place to go missing. Maybe not a hard place to get injured and die, but a hard place to go missing and not be found. Yeah,
that is the thought I was having. I went and hiked it in August. He hiked it in June. So, similar conditions. And
well, you and a complete stranger on the internet who've been there had a very similar sense.
Yep.
And I'm just, like I said, I'm not there, but looking at the pictures I've been seeing, I could see that because I've been hiking in areas like that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There are plenty of spots, at least along the loop we did, where you could get injured and kill yourself. Like, completely not out of the question. The toughest part of our hike was when we were getting up towards the Paintbrush Divide. There was some real sketchy kind of switchbacks that you had to go up, and this was well above the tree line. And there's steep drop-offs, and like this guy said, there wasn't like a lot of jagged rock, but it was very steep elevation, like 60 to 80 degree slopes. And if I would have lost my footing and fallen, I would have died. But you would have seen something sitting at the bottom because there was no vegetation, no trees.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just open, rocky valley, and unless something happened to him at the lower elevations where the vegetation's thick, like where I saw the Grizzly, I mean, you could, if you wandered off trail, something could happen. But I don't understand how he could have gone missing.
How thick is the vegetation? Like, is it super dense, or is it just, like, I saw the images, but you were on the ground. Like,
yeah,
is it like the kind of forest where you could see maybe 20 feet in, or was it like if you're off the trail, it's just a wall?
I mean, it's the kind of, I would describe it as a lot of, like pine type trees and vegetation that would come up maybe, knee high on me.
Okay.
So like not super thick, like,
you could just go walk into it.
Yeah. Looking at, the pictures I have, at least where we were, you could walk in there pretty easily. I mean, it's pretty dense, but not as dense as some places we've hiked, like in the Rockies, like in Colorado or, or like Oregon. So, could he have gone missing in that denser vegetation? Totally possible. I guess we'll just jump right into theories.
Yeah.
Since we're already kind of talking.
I want to hear yours because you're very, very focused on whatever you have in mind.
So I don't think it's animal attack, even though there are grizzlies and, grizzly, brown bears, black bears in the park. There's cougars and bobcats, which are very rare. The type of search that happened, there would have, and, with all the dog search teams, they would have found evidence of an animal attack. And the thing you got to realize too is he was hiking in June, so bears, might still be coming out of their hibernation and they might be kind of grumpy and feeding, getting fattened up for the summer.
Sure.
So is it possible that he came across a disgruntled bear and it attacked him? Possible. Like when we encountered that grizzly in the Tetons, he was eating berries off trail, and the ranger told us that if there's natural food around, the bears will leave people alone.
Yeah,
and
they don't want to waste energy fighting.
They're not gonna attack you. They're gonna keep, unless they have their cubs with them. And this, a lot of these trails are so heavily trafficked that the bears typically don't like to get very close to the trails.
If there's a lot of people all the time, they're gonna avoid those spaces.
Yeah, and I mean the off chance that there's a bear who's had human food, the National Park Service unfortunately does a good job of getting rid of those bears, which is why you should never feed them. So I'm going to rule out animal attack. I mean, he was traveling light.
I agree with you.
He doesn't sound like he had bear spray with him, which is, I mean, if you're hiking in grizzly country, always carry bear mace. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. I'm going to rule out any kind of mental health issue. It sounds like the law enforcement factored that in and ruled it out right away. He seemed perfectly normal and,
and I actually have a video where he's talking. Let's see if I have it queued up.
Yeah. But
keep going. But because then we'd have a good idea of kind of, what's he saying? What does he sound like? Yeah.
So, I mean, he, let me know when you're ready. I'll switch.
I'm ready. Switch me.
All right.
We'll listen to Cian. This is what it is for those listening. There's like not an ad, but like a clipping for his missing persons. And they actually embedded a video in the middle of it showing him.
So far I've gone 650 feet and just over a kilometer at 25 minutes, which isn't amazing, but the start of the season you're pretty unfit. But thinking of doing a little a couple of videos of this season, the exploration of this season. Where are we gonna go? What are we gonna do? If you're a skit skier, snowboarder, I don't think I'm gonna impress too much, but by all means, have a little look. Share, do as you please. Let's go.
So, yeah, I agree. Probably no mental health issues. Seemed like a really cool guy.
Yeah.
That was not when he went missing. Obviously, that was an earlier video for those listening. That's not a video that he took that they would found or recovered or anything.
Yeah. So I don't have any reason to believe that it was a mental health thing. He seemed, and obviously we've said this before. Just because somebody outwardly doesn't show signs of mental health issues doesn't mean that they're not dealing with something. So it's not always a great gauge of their mental health. But law enforcement did not seem to think that was an issue with this case. I mean, one of the things is in that video you played, he does seem kind of like adventurous, like an explorer.
Yes.
Like he may go for the 8-mile hike, but he might just be like, F it, I'm going to go off trail and just see what I can find. So perhaps he started down this trail, but then decided to just on a whim, stop off trail, and he got out of the search zone and had an accident then, and hasn't been found yet. And if it happened at lower elevations, he would be in a lot of that vegetation. If he passed away, his body would then probably be, there's bobcats, cougars, gray wolves, foxes, coyotes.
Yeah.
3 different bear species. I mean, the remains would be, disturbed.
Yeah, the clothing and such.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the weather was so nice. It's in the 70s. Like, he didn't have any warm weather gears, so if he was stuck out there at night, I mean, 38 degrees is cold if you're in shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Like that, could you make it through the night if you could, like, hunker down in a hole somewhere? Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, so I think there's a risk of, exposure and to hypothermia.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I actually had an experience with that in high school when I went up to Boundary Waters.
Yeah.
Middle of summer. It was like June. Really warm out. I mean, we're swimming in the lakes.
Yep.
It's that type of heat. I remember I fell asleep outside next to the campfire. Yeah. And it went out at some point in the night, and I woke up and I was shaking. I was pre-hypothermic. I was actually very close, and like I had a hoodie on, I had pants on, but quite simply just laying on the ground, it like sucks all the body heat out of you.
Yeah.
So if you're already exposed to, cooler weather, you've been sweating, things like that, and you have to go to sleep and not have a proper shelter or insulation, you could go into hypothermia in a single night.
Oh yeah. I think, totally plausible. I think my main theory, I think, is based on his video that we watched, that in an adventurous explorer type, he went off trail and something happened. And because of that, they weren't able to find him. And he must have done it lower in the valley when there was still vegetation, because I just don't see how, if that happened higher elevations, they wouldn't have found him.
Yeah.
Especially on a sunny day in June, there's no snow on the ground. It's not going to snow. It's not like he fell down a canyon and then got covered with 5 feet of snow.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. It's June. And it's odd if he would have been at, like, I remember when we were doing the paintbrush divide, you could see people like all the way off into the distance, kind of like, you've seen this before.
In Glacier.
Yeah,
when we did the main trail that like goes around the whole mountain range.
So
like you see people that are like, it looks like a couple miles off, but it's really far away.
Yeah, and if I would have seen someone like way far off, like like a color, their backpack all of a sudden like tumble down the mountain, even if I was like a mile away, I would have seen something.
Yeah,
and I would have hiked up to that spot and stopped, and I would have at least said something when I got off the trail to the park rangers. Yeah. So I don't think it was an accident higher up in elevation, because I think somebody would have seen it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my theory is he went off trail lower in the valley and something happened, and probably his remains will be found at some point, maybe.
Yeah, hopefully.
I don't know. What do you think?
So, my initial process was kind of more like your second guess.
Yeah.
My thing was, I feel like he was experienced enough where he's one of those guys that can go fast in the trail.
Yeah.
7-mile loop is not, I mean, that's why he would start late in the afternoon. He could probably crack that thing out in a couple hours,
Yeah.
a few
no
hours.
bag, nothing.
Yep. With
yeah.
light gear, if he's used to hiking the mountains at that altitude, you can get that done quick. I assumed he either did that and then went off and did something else and
Yeah.
then succumbed to some sort of injury, like you said, or he was never in that trail. And that's just where somebody saw him. Maybe he was on his way out and then he went somewhere else. I don't know. But I kind of agree with you. I feel
But his
like
car was there, so he didn't leave the park.
well,
with
that's what I'm
his
saying.
car.
Like if he went somewhere else, but his car was still parked there.
Yep.
That's kind of what my guess was going to be, is that he was just not in the main focus search area for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most plausible reason. I know sometimes we say, like, maybe it was abduction or...
I mean, that's kind of like,
killer.
yeah, I'd say like my A guess would be he was not in the search area because he went somewhere else. B guess would be something like what you said in their first guess of not really being prepared.
Yeah.
And that he's on that trail and just succumbed. They couldn't find him. Third guess would be like foul play.
Yeah.
Was he abducted in the parking lot
And we
for
forget,
whatever reason?
this wasn't even a year ago.
Yeah.
This was last June.
Yep.
So, he went missing in June. Your window to hike the Tetons before, a lot of heavy snow falls in is just a few months. So, I mean, there is a chance, I'm not going to say likelihood, but there's a chance that maybe a hiker or climber discovers his remains this summer.
It happened with Paul Miller.
Yeah.
We did the episode, was in talk with his family, and then only a few months ago,
What about
they
that
found his remains.
lady that went missing in California? You remember her name? I thought that happened to her too. She was the hairstylist.
They recovered like 20 miles and somewhere completely different.
Yeah, so, it does happen. So I wouldn't be shocked if at some point maybe his remains are found. But, the vast majority of the cases we do, they're not. So, other than that, just kind of a strange case. This one was a little different for me because I didn't hike it last year when he did it, but I've hiked this park before. So it's kind of weird to know,
been in the area.
This guy disappeared right in an area that we hiked. So hopefully they find him and his family gets closure.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. Well, thanks again for tuning into our show. We appreciate all of you for listening and sharing locations unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have the YouTube channel where you can subscribe there as well to support the show financially or be a Patreon subscriber. You can also visit our Facebook store or the website store to pick up cool swag. And what we're going to start doing, we're not going to go live every episode, but we're going to record the episodes, released to Patreon and YouTube subscribers first, like a day or two early before the show actually gets released to the public. So that's just another added benefit to all the Patreon subscribers. So if you're seeing this first, it's because you're a paid subscriber. Otherwise, you got to wait. And just besides that, remember, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or simply taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we will see you all next time.